Welcome to the last video of Chapter 9. In this video, we're talking about validating data, specifically the data validation on the client side. If you recall, we briefly discussed the client side and the server side things of data validation. The client side talks about everything on the browser. This can be done via HTML or JavaScript and initiates immediate feedback in case there is an error that is discovered, such as the email field we talked about before. The server side does require a processor, in this case PHP, Perl, Python, Ruby, etc. This is a secondary validation process, and chances are this will be where everything is found that does not validate to either your specifications provided by the company, or in case something just does not fit the scale. This is a non-immediate feedback, which means that the information has to be sent to the server in order to be validated. If you have something along the lines of an email address, that can be easily taken care of on the client side. But if you have something as far as, say, a telephone number, you want to make sure that has actual numbers in it. So in that case, since there's not much you can do on the client side other than run it through a JavaScript processor, you can send it to the server and tell the server to appropriately process the information to make sure that numbers are in the field. Again, we're not going to get into server-side programming or validation in this class, but that is something you can look forward to if you start taking Ruby, Python, or even PHP. Let's take a look at some data validation on the client side. If you recall from previous lectures, the input types of email, URL, number, date, and other items automatically have something built in for modern browsers only that will check and report an error if data validation is not met. For example, in this email field, there is no @ sign, so the form will not allow the information to be submitted until there is an @ sign in the email address. In this example, Bob is not a valid email address. It does need the @ sign. The same thing will happen for URL with protocols. Numbers, in most cases, it may or may not allow for the number type to give a number itself, and date if the format is not in a date-friendly format, or in case there are letters inside the date that don't conform to the format. Again, this is a client side only. I would highly recommend sending this information to the form handler and the processor for secondary validation in case the browser does not validate it, or in case the browser does not have something in it that doesn't allow it to appropriately send, or if it does send, you want to make sure that it's the right information. It is nice to have an attribute to mark whether the field is required or not. You can actually have this by using the required attribute inside of input fields. The form should not submit if a required field is not selected, filled out, or checked. For example, I agree to the terms and service. Everyone's seen that. Usually required fields are assisted with some kind of mark like an asterisk to visually tell the person that's filling out the form, hey, this field is required, instead of trying to submit the form and go back and say, hey, this field is required, why don't you fill it out? So in this case, if you use the required attribute, the form will not send if a required field has a value that is nothing, or has a character length of less than 1. In this case, I'm trying to fill out this form with first name and last name. First name is John, last name is, well, I don't have one. So the form will not let me submit anything until I put something in the last name field. Okay, so that is everything for Chapter 9. Hopefully you got a good overview about how forms work and how they're set up and different form methods to use inside the form tag. If you have any questions about this or Chapter 9, please send me an email or hit me up on Twitter, and I'll get back to you with the best possible answer. Don't forget to review the Code With Me videos, which will give you a good hands-on example about how to use the different things we talked about in these videos.